Um, before I sit amidst the pumpkins and hay bales on this great stage, I wanted to give something. Would you help me a little bit do this? Um, I've got this little bag of blue marbles, and I want to give a gift to everyone. So if you would split them, maybe there's smaller bags inside, and then make sure everyone gets one, including Linda and Darius would be great. Let me sit up here. Is this helpful, or is it all right if I? Helpful. Okay, just checking. It's kind of an honor to meet these young women in person. It's an honor to meet these young women in person. I've been a fan, I guess you could say, because when you click on a button on a particular kind of website, it makes you a fan, according to the people who design Facebook. And we're also friends, according to Facebook. But in real life, I was a fan, and now we are friends, which is a nice thing to do, to move from virtual to real. So continuing on the theme of water and ocean, I want to tell you three small stories. The first one is about an animal. The second one is about a person. And the third one is about a color. And my goal with our time here together is to leave you with an understanding about yourself that you didn't have before. I want you to understand something about your relationship with yourself and our planet that you may not have understood this way. And that goal is meant to be an initiation, not an answer, but a beginning to an understanding. That'll make more sense a little bit later. Does everybody have their blue marble? Okay, we'll get to that. So the first short story is a story about a turtle. And I'm going to start at the beginning. And that was, as a kid, we used to catch turtles. And we used to paint numbers on their backs. And I know that might not have been so much fun for them. But we would paint numbers on their backs, and we put them back into the Chesapeake Bay. And then sometimes we'd catch them again. And sometimes they would have numbers on their backs. And then we would write that down. And in an 11-year-old way, we were doing wildlife biology research. We would write equations to try to figure out, very simple equations, mind you, but we would use algebra to try to figure out how many turtles were in the Chesapeake Bay. Now, there's a lot of problems with our scientific design. But, 11, okay? We were 11. And it was fun. It was so much fun to be outside in motion, interacting with these animals, and then dream about it, and then dream up ways to learn more. And I just loved that. And at some point decided that that's what I wanted to do, that studying turtles was so much fun that I wanted to do it as an adult. And I made that decision to go to graduate school and become a turtle guy. And I remember standing in front of my parents, my mom and dad, in their living room, breaking that news. And it was it was a big deal, because to my mom and dad, you had three choices: law, medicine, and business. And I picked turtles. There's one over here. Outside the box, I guess you might say. And I remember standing in our living room saying, I'm gonna be a turtle guy. I'm gonna get my PhD in turtles. And I remember my dad saying, what are you gonna do with that? Legit question. And now as a dad, I can relate to his concern. And I looked at him and my mom, and I said, I'm going to do everything. And my dad said, I don't know what that means. And I said, I don't know what that means either, but we're going to find out. So I've spent the last 20 years, in fact, I leave 6 a.m. tomorrow morning to continue hanging out with turtles because I really like them. I do, and I can't completely explain why, but I care an awful lot about them, and I have since I was 11. And I get to spend time with them and learn about them and from them and work with people to do that same thing. And what that's meant is that I've made some of my best friends, some of whom are former sea turtle hunters, who are now, I'll go meet them tomorrow, and they're some of the world's best sea turtle protectors. They're sea turtle champions, and they grew up hunting and eating sea turtles. Some of the people I work with to save sea turtles are literally made out of sea turtle because of the numbers of sea turtles that they've eaten in their lives. But back when we started working together, we put a satellite transmitter on the back of a big giant loggerhead turtle named Adelita. And we named her Adelita because the daughter of the fisherman that was helping us was named Adelita. And she was about your age, young girl, and we named this turtle after Adelita. We put this transmitter on her back, and the transmitter was about the size of a cell phone with a little antenna sticking up. And we glued it on, and we put Adelita into the girl Adelita's dad's boat, and we took her off the coast, and we released her. And I remember, so the lack of confidence that I had meant that I needed to review the videotape to make sure that the transmitter didn't fall right off once the turtle hit the water. So when we got back to shore, we pulled the videotape out. And I remember looking at it and seeing Adelita swim about 3 strokes, flipper strokes, which was about the distance from one side to the other of the tank that she had lived in before we released her. Because I'm all about getting turtles out of tanks and back into the ocean if they're healthy enough to be free. If they need time in the tank for rehabilitation, let's do it with the goal of getting them back into the ocean. And so she swam 3 strokes, about the distance from here to that wall, which was about how big her tank was. And then she paused, as if to say, there should be a wall here. If I were in my tank, I would be hitting my head against a wall right now. But there was no wall, because it was not her tank. It was the Pacific Ocean. And she started to swim again. And she kept swimming until she disappeared from our view. And then that took us back to land, where we could follow her because of the satellite transmitter that we had attached to her. And Adelita began to swim west. And we started putting her positions on a map of the Pacific. And we weren't sure where she was going. She clearly was quite sure where she was going, which was home. And I think about that moment where she paused, and in her mind, there was a wall. But in reality, there was no wall. There was just blue. So her imagination, even in her little, and no offense, little reptilian brain, she is a reptile, she has a little brain. It's kind of one of the things about reptiles that makes them different from us. In her small reptilian brain, she imagined a wall that wasn't there, and then kept swimming. And she swam, and she swam, and she swam, and we kept putting dots on the map. And pretty soon, people all over the world found Adelita, and they found the map that we were making, depicting, in a very, very simplistic way, something quite phenomenal that she was doing. This was 1996. And so the internet was relatively new. people were joining it for the first time every day. Imagine that, right? Just people who were saying, well, what is this internet thing? And then they'd find it and then go, I like turtles. Let me see if there's anything going on with turtles. And they'd find Adelita. So we were building this network of turtle fans and wildlife fans because it was the coolest wildlife thing going on there for a while. And day after day, week after week, mile after mile, Adelita kept swimming west until it became very clear where she was headed. And she was headed home, and home was Japan. So Adelita began that trip with those first 3 strokes that took her 7,000 miles over 368 days. But first she had to pass through an imaginary wall, right? And I think about that. I think about that lesson from that turtle. That's so profound. How many walls do we create? How many imaginary walls do you have in your life? Chelsea and Danielle, there was a wall, and they knocked it down. They said, let's do this. They could have said, that's a thick, big wall. Those balloon makers, they're just too big. People are just too used to this. But they didn't. They said, let's see if we can just walk through this wall. And that's what they're doing. And that's what we need to do. And that's what that turtle taught me. Little did I know at that moment that was what she would teach me. So just to bring it kind of full circle, my dad in particular wasn't ever really quite sure what I was doing with turtles and wasn't really sure it was okay with him. And then one day, this article appeared in a magazine called National Geographic. And it turns out that my dad's a big National Geographic fan. He has a whole wall that's yellow. Do you have anybody in your life or maybe in your own house? That yellow wall of those yellow magazines going back to his childhood. And National Geographic thought Adelita was interesting enough to write about her and put some photos in their magazine. And my dad and I have the same name, Wallace, the letter J, Nichols. And when my name appeared, which is his name, appeared in that yellow magazine, oh yeah, that's what it took. Dad is cool with turtles now. That's just sort of, and for each of us, it's a different thing that lights it up. I was lit up just by the turtles themselves. My dad, it took a little more than that. The legitimacy came from National Geographic, not from the turtles themselves, for him. So be it. Now he's a big fan of turtles, and very supportive of the work that I get to do with the fishermen in Mexico. And I'm really excited and kind of sad that I won't be able to spend the next few days here and I'm in fact going to be with the turtles and some fishermen and their families, bringing my daughters and their kindergarten teacher, the former kindergarten teacher, with us because she's been hearing about these turtles from the kids. And she said, when I retire, I want to meet those turtles. I've never seen a sea turtle. And so tomorrow morning, we're taking our kids' kindergarten teacher to go meet some turtles and meet the men and women who are right now responsible for quite a nice recovery of sea turtle populations in the eastern Pacific. I'll tell you another small story. This one's about my mom. And it kind of connects. She's my mom. She's been hearing about the ocean and sea turtles for quite a while, and all of the issues that sea turtles connect us to, like plastic pollution and overfishing and climate change and just about every issue that affects the ocean that you can imagine. But my mom's afraid of the water, and it goes back to when she was a kid in South Dakota, and they were at a hot springs, and she was going down on a rope and slipped off, and it was deep over her head, and nobody noticed, and she went underwater, and came up for air and barely got enough air and then went back underwater until at the last possible moment somebody rescued her. And then a few years later, a little boy named Jim, she remembers his name, I won't say his last name in case you're him, in Green Bay, and she was swimming, and he thought it would be fun to dunk her. And he just, his kids playing, and he was dunking her, and she wasn't synchronizing breathing with the opportunity to breathe, and she just couldn't get it right, she felt, and she was breathing in water, and it was another bad water experience. So it's always threes, right? So here's the third one. To make matters worse, on her honeymoon with my dad, they went to Waikiki and had a nice honeymoon, the beginning of a nice honeymoon. Don Ho was actually playing, for real. As cliche as it sounds. And she was swimming with my dad and Miss Hawaii, who they'd befriended. And my dad and Miss Hawaii thought it would be really, really funny to put a baby octopus down her bikini back. Not funny, in case any of you are thinking about doing that to a loved one. And that was the last time she ever went in the ocean. 50 years ago. She said, I'm not into this. I'm not into swimming. I'm not into going underwater. And I'm done with the ocean. Thanks, Miss Hawaii, right? And my dad. So my parents are still married. And 2 weeks ago, we celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in Hawaii, near the scene of the crime. And I said, Mom, the girls, my two daughters and I want to take you swimming in the ocean. And she said, ain't happening. No way. I don't go in the ocean. And we reviewed the 3 stories that have resulted in that. And I said, Mom, let's go in the ocean. Your girl, I'm going to choke up telling the story, but when maybe, you may not get the chance to swim in the ocean with your granddaughters. They love the water so much. You love the water too. They want to be in the water with you, because something about being in the water with those you love is so good. It's so, so good. Just being, holding hands or floating together or just playing, and it's so good to be in the water together. I want to do that. And she said, okay, I'll try. And she put her bathing suit on. One piece, not a bikini anymore. She was back. And my daughter Grace, my daughter Julia, and my mom and I walked down to the beach, and we walked into the water, and we walked, and as it gets deeper, you kind of get that chill feeling, even though it's warm Hawaii water. And then we were chest deep in the water. And I said, lean back and let me lift you up and float and just relax. Relax your arms, relax your legs, close your eyes. And the girls came around her, and we just held her floating in the water. And I haven't seen her that relaxed ever in my whole life. I've never seen my mother relax like that in my whole life. And it was so good. And then she just got into it, and it became relaxing, and then became fun, and then she wanted to hold the girls, and they wanted to hug her, and just the way water does that, it does that for us in a way that we can hug and hold hands on land, and it's very nice. But when you do that in the water, it's really, really excellent. And then she got out, and she was very, very, very happy that she had gone back to the water with her granddaughters. So the third story I want to tell you is also connected. It's about blue. It's about a color. And it's about this work that we're doing. We call the project Blue Mind. And people around the world work to solve some pretty serious problems. Pollution, plastic on our beaches, balloons going out and wherever they go and ending up in places they shouldn't be. And on and on and on. I'm not going to list all of the issues facing our planet right now. You know many of them, and you'll hear about others. And the people I know who are working the hardest to solve those problems have fallen in love with nature at some point. Had the experiences you've had as children that your mom and dad helped you to have in nature, outside, in motion, getting dirty, getting wet, hiking, walking, swimming, playing, falling asleep, and then going back and doing it again. And that's part of what drives us, that love, that feeling that my mom had, that feeling that we all have had as children in some way or another, in a forest, with a river, with a lake. But whenever, as a professional conservation scientist, whenever I go to these meetings, except for this meeting and meetings like this, you're usually asked to check that stuff at the door. If you get up and talk about love as a scientist in public, you can hear the eyeballs rolling back in people's skulls. I mean, I'm not kidding you. It's just, and your credibility, whatever that means, is diminished. Despite the fact that it's that love that brought every single person into that room in the first place. It's that love that initially brought us into our careers as wildlife biologists, as conservation biologists, as people solving problems. And whether we do it professionally or not, it's that love that got us going, right? And out of that love comes our fight and the struggle and our anger. And that's what I call red mind. So you need blue mind and red mind. It's not an either or situation. It's a yes and both situation. But if we live in red mind all the time, the stress destroys us, literally. It ruins our DNA. It ruins our neurons. It makes us sick. Stress is connected to 60% of modern illnesses. And go over to Stanford and talk to neurophysiologist Robert Sapolsky about the physiology of stress. And it doesn't matter if you're a human being, an octopus, or an orangutan, stress will make you sick. It's a fact. 20 years ago, that might have been sort of a fringe idea. Now it's considered a fact. Stress makes you sick. And for me, the thing that reduces stress the best, better than a glass of good red wine, way better, not even close, is water. Being by the water, being in the water, being on the water, being under the water. It can be the bathtub. It can be the sink. It can be a glass of water. It can be the Pacific Ocean. It can be a pond. It can be a lake. It can be a river. It can be a hot tub. It can be a waterfall. Water makes me happy. Water reduces stress in my life. And when I talk to people, it does it for them too. There's a lot of people who have the same feeling around water. When we want to express our deepest emotions for each other at the beginning of life, at the end of life, on a honeymoon, at a wedding ceremony, at a baptism, there's water, oftentimes. People want to do those special things. They want to say those special things to each other at the edge of water. Could be a lake or a river, could be a fountain, could be the ocean, but that's where we like to express our love for each other and our commitment. That's interesting. And as a scientist, I wanted to bring that conversation through the front door into the serious meetings and not have people roll their eyes and not have people say, boy, you've lost it, haven't you? Which is how it began with this conversation. So I started talking to neuroscientists, talking to people who study emotion, the science of emotion, people who study love, people who study stress, people who study awe, the word awe that's been overused in the form awesome, but it used to mean something a while ago. That feeling of seeing something that's truly awesome. The ocean comes to mind. People study the science of awe, and understanding it makes it more awesome, not less awesome somehow. And starting to connect with those people and say, what's going on with water? What is it about water that pulls us, that relaxes us? And the more I looked into it, the more I'd find these different dots, not right on top of the questions I was asking, but all around. And then we started connecting those dots and thinking about the connection between water and all of these different emotions, both the emotions that drive the problems that we're trying to fix and the emotions that create the solutions. So from the range from fear and greed and power addiction, which we need to understand, to love and awe and compassion and empathy and creativity, which we also need to understand. And as we've begun to dig into this, it's just gotten more and more interesting. And this project we call Blue Mind is now in its 4th year. And there's a piece of research that I can't say very much about. And I'm going to try to go right up to the line without getting myself into trouble, because the researchers I work with are getting it through the peer review process. But so some colleagues at the University of Exeter Medical School have just shown people images of water while looking at their brain in an fMRI scanner. Hasn't been done before, surprisingly. Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. The brain on water hasn't really been studied well. By the way, the brain on iPhones, yep, got that. The brain on chocolate, yep, we got a whole bunch of research on that. The brain on red wine, the brain on stress, the brain on almost anything you can probably dream up. If you look on Google, you'll find something. But the brain on water, kind of missing. Kind of surprising, seeing that the human brain is so important to us, and water is the predominant feature of our little blue planet. So our colleagues at the University of Exeter, where we're holding the 4th Blue Mind Conference this coming June, have some brand new research that suggests, this is the science talk coming out, suggests that possibly, maybe, all the caveats until it's published, that our brain responds to water the same way our brain responds to the face of someone we love. Nice. And not surprising whatsoever if you've ever looked at water. If you've ever missed your water and been away and gotten back to it and looked at it, and you look it in the face and you go, Mom, Dad, I love you. That's how it feels. When you haven't seen your loved one for a long time, and then you do, it feels good. And that feeling can be looked at because it's happening in your brain. So that same feeling is what happens when we're in the presence of the water we love. Let's bring that through the front door soon into the meetings where people roll their eyes at this kind of talk and start to have these conversations about the benefits of healthy water. Not just to biodiversity, although that's near and dear to our hearts. Not just so that we can get fish to eat and protein, although that's important. Not just because our waters produce the oxygen we breathe, although clearly we need that, but also the cognitive benefits of water, because water enhances creativity. That's why poets and artists and writers go to the edge of water to do what? Get creative, expand their brains, expand their minds, see things differently. Water reduces our stress. What's that worth? Everything you got, and then some. Water connects us to each other. I watch people walk up to the water, and you know what they do? They reach for each other's hands. Without taking their eyes off the water, they reach down and find each other's hands. And then they watch it together. And time, we talked about time earlier. Darius opened up with this great story about time perception. Time changes when you're looking at water. So that's what Blue Mind is all about, is that inquiry into our brains on water of all different kinds. And I'm not a neuroscientist. My PhD is in evolutionary biology and turtles, remember? And so I'm not claiming to be a neuroscientist, but I have a lot of friends now who are, and who are finding these ideas fascinating and bringing them into their labs and producing the kind of research that we're seeing coming out of the University of Exeter. So those three stories, wrap a piece of string around them and tie a bow and pull them tight. These animals and people and then ourselves, our relationship to blue, or what blue represents, and representing water. Good stuff to think about, something to keep in mind. And I hope that the next time you step up to some water, whether it's in the shower later this weekend or the Pacific Ocean that's down the road, that you just take a moment and be quiet with yourself for as long as you can. It may be a minute, it may be an hour, it may be 10 days. But just sit with your brain on water and pay a little bit closer attention to what it's like, how it is, what it does, and what happens. So I just want to wrap things up with an explanation of why you have a blue marble in your hand. If you grab those, and I like to give gifts as tokens of gratitude. And this is just a small token of gratitude for what you're doing, what you're fighting for, what you love. We have gratitude on our side as the people who are working for fixing what's broken. And we need to use more gratitude. And it's gatherings like this that are all about that gratitude that I love so much, that are reminders that we can do that more. And saying thank you like you mean it doesn't cost very much. In fact, it's usually quite free. But it has such a big upside. The ROI, as they say, the return on investment, is excellent. Super good. So this is a token of gratitude. And it's just a small piece of very round, very smooth, recycled blue glass. And if you hold it up like that, that's about what we look like right now, from a little over 1 million miles away. For real, that's what we look like. If you could somehow fly 1 million miles away, which really isn't that far, and if you could turn around and look out your back window, that's what you would see. And that's us. And so this little gift is just a simple reminder that we live on this little blue planet. It's the only blue planet like it that we're aware of at the moment. There may be some other good ones out there, but we're not about to be spending any time on them anytime soon. And that means, so what it could mean to some people is, wow, we're small and insignificant. To me, it means every little thing you do matters. Every choice and vote you make with what you do or you don't do matters. Every little thing. Every piece of plastic or balloon that you pick up from where it shouldn't be matters, because it doesn't end up being a meal for someone. It's just a little blue marble that is a reminder. And the first photograph that the NASA astronauts took that encompassed the whole planet, they called that photograph the blue marble. And it's the most reproduced photograph ever. You know why? Because we love it. We love our home. So we make copies of that photo, and we put them on things. And we put them on the wall, and we put them on the screen, and we put them on flags. Because that's home. Because when we look at that, we say, that's my home. I love it. I want to be reminded of that. So that photograph has been reproduced over and over again. And this little blue marble is just a reminder of that. So if you take your blue marble and you put it really close to your eye, almost touch your eye, but don't touch your eye, and look inside it. Look right way inside your blue marble. And look at what you see in there. Everything. Maybe turtles swimming. Kids always see turtles and dolphins and sharks and whales. And adults tell me they see mostly plankton. Sometimes bacteria and viruses and things like tiny things. Plankton's important. But you can use your imagination and see anything you want in there. So this is where we get all kind of Santa Cruz mountainy. I want you to take your blue marble and put it on your forehead. And I want you to think of somebody, use that amazing imagination that you have, and I want you to think of somebody that you really should be saying some thank you to, who's doing really good things, and that maybe you haven't gotten around to thanking them, but who would really, really love it if you did. And just see them standing there in your mind's eye, doing whatever it is that they do to make things better. And I know you can probably think of 100 people right off the top, but just pick one and see them, literally see them, see their face, see their eyes. And I want you to take your blue marble and put it on your heart. And just imagine walking up to them, looking them in the eyes, and saying, thank you. And telling them for what? And putting your blue marble in their hands and saying, this is for you. This is what it means. This is where I got it. Pass it on. Do the same thing. Take that blue marble and pass it on to somebody else. And remind them that this is it, man. This is what we got. Big blue planet that we live on. And you will make their day. You'll make their year, perhaps. And then they will do the same thing. And that blue marble that you're holding will start to carry a story or two or three or four with it. And you may hear some stories back from them about who they touched. And it's so simple. Saying thank you. So that's how I wanted to start tonight. It's just simply by saying thank you. Telling you a little bit about a turtle I know. And about my mom. And about yourself. And about the color blue. And giving you this little gift. So it's an honor to be here. I wish I could be here all weekend. I really appreciate the work that's happening here this weekend. So thanks again for the invitation, and love y'all.